Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to another edition of Political Playback. I forgot to actually check my sheet. I think it's number 53, but I'm pretty certain on that, but never mind. Simon O'Connor, how are you?
Well, I'm actually feeling really pleased now. Political Playback is older than I am. By a few years, I might add.
And the other thing is that we haven't had a Broadcasting Standards Authority complaint yet, but expect one of those to come.
I just put them into my junk file anyway if they turned up. There's a warning to the BSA from me.
Okay, image of the week. I just did want to cover something. I did have quite a chuckle, and I was just interested to ask you about this because I was interested to know about the protocol. But yeah, One News, Logan Church got very exercised about the fact that he wasn't allowed into this meeting between Judith Collins and Peter Hesketh. No, it's not defence, it's war, isn't it? It's
War.
the
Secretary of War.
Secretary of War. What's the actual protocol here? Is it supposed to be that the media is allowed into these meetings, or are they allowed to actually have private meetings?
It's context now. I mean, it's normal for media to be allowed, and usually at the end of such meetings.
Mm.
But the American context right now, Bob, is quite important. And the long and short of that is that Pete Hegseth, again, the Secretary of War, has put out a whole lot of new rules and restrictions on American media, basically saying they can only report on Pentagon approved material. And so my strong suspicion is that TVNZ was asked to agree to the same, and they didn't, like a lot of American press haven't. And so they've said, well, you can't be here, out you go. But the secondary element too is just a reminder that despite everything, New Zealand is an incredibly small player in the military space. And I wouldn't be surprised to an extent, having dealt with some of these guys over the years. New Zealand, even now, talks a big game, but doesn't actually deliver all that much militarily. So they're not going to lose any sleep, the Americans, that is. But overall, it would have been the rules for Americans
Yeah.
applied to the Kiwis. And I doubt that TVNZ agreed to them. And so out they went.
So I guess there's two aspects to that. Just quickly, one is how much would the Americans still be aware of this, and especially the Trump administration, and also how much of this is a concern to you that there seems to be this. Well, in the White House, they've actually allowed some of the minor players, like, for example, Daily Wire and some other news agencies that never got a shoe in to. So there was kind of this opening up. But at the same time, there's been a lot of meetings where media have had to sign things. And so media have said, okay, we're not going to play game if we come under conditions. Actually, I wish our media had said that with the during COVID, eh? But anyway, that's another point. So are you concerned just about the fact that the parts of the Trump administration are shutting down on the media like this, even though we're not that greatly friends with the media?
Yeah, here I am is the short answer. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think mainstream media at times do an absolutely terrible job, very biased, so on and so forth. I mean, you and I have talked and written about it a
Mm.
lot. But at the end of the day, you still need a media, a broad media, reporting in and out of these places. And so taking the Pentagon, look, I understand they don't want, military secrets leaked, but actually to hold them to account, you do need journalists who are prepared to be able to ask questions or to talk to people off the record and not only using,
Mm.
if you will, the manufactured information
Right.
coming out. So look, it's I'm probably more on the media's side with this one. I think the Trump administration, yep, are going, hey, look, we're letting these Daily Wires and other
Mm.
groups in. That's fine and that's great. That's expansion. But at the
Mm.
same time, they're contracting out. They're pulling down on others, and I just much prefer to see a lot of them there rather than fewer.
Okay. The other image of the day was just this one. This one made me laugh. So because I know that you've had a failed netball career, Simon, and the Silver Ferns. So there's all this drama around Dame Nolene Taurua, and I mean she's just loved by New Zealanders, I think in general. So Netball New Zealand aren't doing themselves any favours, but the government has said, well, hang on, we might be able to solve this problem. Let's get none other than Raylene Castle involved from Sport New Zealand. And of course, she's got a fantastic track record when it comes to negotiation and sending Rugby Australia down to the gurgler. Can you just explain how can the government solve a netball coaching thing like this? And can they say, well, we're going to withdraw millions of dollars from you if you don't sort your act out?
To be honest, Bob, it's one of these topics that's actually a bit beyond me. I find it bordering on ridiculous that the government has to get involved with the coaching decisions or employment of a sports team.
Yeah.
There's quite a few other things happening in New Zealand at the moment, and I know we're going to talk about the mega strike in a moment. But even stepping back from that, that's what the government's concerning itself with. But I better be honest as well. While I'm vaguely aware that there's something going on, I've not even looked into it. I mean, God, and that's no offense to netballers. Great sport. Been taking foster child and my own stepkids to netball over the years, but I just I don't know what's going on. And look, Raylene Castles won't sort it out. You're right to point out the disaster she made. Reminder, actually, isn't it, Bob, for people to check out the videos of the Falaus. I mean, they really exposed just how poorly she acted.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I thought. I thought they'll get Raylene Castle involved, and she'll send the wrong contract to Dame Nolene Taurua, and that'll make the situation worse. Anyway, let's get into our first topic. Oh, just a reminder, if you would like to comment, we do see your comments come through if you comment on our YouTube channel or on our Family First Facebook page, but you may be watching on all our other channels as well, so that's fine. We are where you are because we want to catch your attention. But anyway, if you do want to comment, come through there. Okay, so let's just deal with firstly the mega strike. The Post in Wellington did a poll. Interestingly, it was a bit of I thought it was a weak poll because I've done polling for some of our issues, and I've always sort of understood that you really need to be polling around 800 to 1,000 people randomly to get a fairly accurate result. Now, this poll that they're quoting, they only polled 450, so it did have a margin of error. And I was actually interested to see that when you went onto the Stuff website, you'll see there 17,500 votes, and it's a lot closer. It's a bit more split. So I'm just wondering, do you think the strikers have lost the room, or are they taking New Zealanders with them on this one? And one thing I've found interesting before you comment on that, Simon, is that a lot of people who say they support the strike, you ask them, well, how much are teachers, doctors and nurses earning? They have no idea. So there's this kind of, oh, well, we just like teachers and doctors and nurses because we all do, because at some stage we're going to benefit from them, and firemen, fire people. So better get my genders right. So anyway, do you think they've lost the room, or have they still got the room?
I think it's really mixed. In fact, that poll from Stuff, I think, is quite telling. I mean, it's not scientific, it's Stuff. So, a lot of their readers lean left. So I actually think it's quite a remarkable result. Look, I think there probably is a genuine split in the country between those who, as you say, they go, look, it's teachers and firefighters and doctors and nurses. We love them, and never ask the questions. I'd have to declare, I actually feel a lot of sympathy for the firefighters in particular. I would see them in a very different situation, actually, to the other unions, and put it really, really simply without much nuance. They haven't had changes to their wages and conditions for a very, very long time, whereas for nurses, the doctors, teachers, this is almost annual. Just about every year they've had an increase, and here they are at again, which is probably why they're losing the room with a whole lot of New Zealanders who are going, we're all doing it tough. The government said there ain't much money, despite the fact that National, as you know, Bob, is spending more than Grant Robertson. They still don't have a lot of money, and yet here are the teachers. That's actually, I better back up for a moment. There's lots of teachers and a lot who do not support the union leadership. So to be really accurate, the union leaders are once again out here with their cap in hand, and I think a lot of New Zealanders are rightly over it.
Yeah. Murray makes a good point, and I have to confess as well. Murray says, I may have voted more than once on the Stuff site. Murray, I did as well, and I did it because I just wanted to test actually how robust it was. So, the danger with some of these polls, especially the ones online where they're self-selected, is that you can get a bit of a campaign going and get everybody online to go after it. I did find the whole thing very funny that they've done a strike today, and there's a whole lot of teacher-only days tomorrow, and then there's a 3-day long weekend, and yet Aero came out and said parents need to stop having holidays during the term. Anyway, that may be a bit of an unfair accusation, but it did seem interesting that there's a lot of teacher-only days tomorrow, Simon.
Look, my own view is there's too many of them. Maybe I have a romantic view back to my school days, or I can't remember things well, but I remember one or two a year. We seem to be having a lot more of them.
Mm.
And the cynic in me is struck how, just like you've mentioned, there are teacher-only days tomorrow, although some schools are having it on
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Mm.
And
Very
so it's
nice.
like, well, yes, exactly. The timing's quite remarkable. I mean, to be fair on a lot of the teachers, there are a number of changes which both the government and the ministry are putting through. So, it is taking teachers time. But you can, I think, be rightly cynical. We'll protest today on Thursday. We'll take a teachers only day on Friday. And oh, what do you know? It's Labour weekend. So
Yeah.
it does seem quite a deliberate set of choices there by not just the teacher unions. Actually, we've got to keep reinforcing that. I
Yeah.
think we've had the nurses union, the doctors, the civil servants.
Yeah, although I will come back to that. Just an interesting comment from Nigel. Spot on, Simon. Many teachers don't support the union leadership. Tricia says, my daughter is an ED nurse and said it is not so much about pay as staffing. True. Nurses who leave are not being replaced. True. And it is the same with support staff. And look, I can speak from personal family experience on that they unfortunately have got rid of senior staff and they haven't replaced. Sorry. The guarantee was that they would get rid of the backroom stuff and keep the front line as it was. Unfortunately, the layoffs have affected both the back room and the front room, and I think that's been a problem.
Oh, look, the strikes are not without merit. Let's be clear, this is not black and white. There are certainly grievances, and each union, I mentioned the firefighters earlier. I actually have more sympathy for what they're asking for. I think certainly in the nursing profession, and I spent a lot of time in hospitals, not myself, fortunately, but family members in the last couple of years. It is really tough. So I don't think, well, I'm certainly not. I don't think we're taking
No.
away from the tensions, but in the face of, I would argue from what I can observe, fair bargaining, a government saying, look, we will increase your wages, we will look at the conditions we can, but we do not just have a printing machine here of money, there are limits. For the unions to then all come together into this dramatic mega strike, which really has all the hallmarks of like the No Kings protest in America. This is orchestrated, this is performative, this is theatric, and that's, if you will, what grinds my gears, to quote Peter Griffin from Family Guy.
And interesting you say that, because here is, let me just enlarge that. Can you see that? All kids are equal, sanction Israel. So that's an interesting little billboard that they had there. And of course, they're dressed up in these animal costumes, which was part of the No Kings protest over the weekend. So I'm a bit worried. This is an important cultured war. And I'm really actually quite upset about that. And I'm going to contact Chloe. Speaking of that, Radio New Zealand, they said more than 100,000 marched through streets. I'm sure they counted them all. And they did all these vox pops, which is where you go up and interview people on the street. And they just happened to dedicate quite a portion of the interview to Chloe. So thanks, Radio New Zealand. Taxpayer-funded endorsement of Green politicians. Probably no surprise there. Have you ever been interviewed for a vox pop? Because this is not the first time it's happened to Chloe, where she just happens to be walking past a camera when they're doing street interviews. You ever been interviewed for one of those street interviews, Simon?
Short answer is no. I've done a couple of interviews when I was at, say, Tiananmen Square events or Hong Kong events. But let's be really clear with the likes of RNZ or Radio New Zealand. They are very deliberately speaking to the people they want to. And so they'll look out for Chloe, and as you point out, give her a huge amount of time, and they would not do it to pretty much any other MP, certainly not of the right. And of course, Bob, they wouldn't have asked Chloe about her being the electorate MP for an area where there's huge homeless problems, violence, crime. She's got absolutely nothing to say. But when there's a camera on issues like this, she will come and emote greatly.
Yep. Okay, George says students have another non-teaching 2 times half days just as they head into external exams for the senior students. I think there is some concern about that. And Eva says, don't forget about the hundreds of wonderful nurses who left because they chose not to get vaccinated. And Rosie says, I feel sorry for those who were having life-saving surgery today. I think That is certainly a concern. And Dennis is being funny. Chloe will be the Minister of Finance based in Gaza. She will have a top office. She'll have a top floor office in one of those buildings. This was an interesting little image. The NZEI, if I've just highlighted there, they want everybody to go to the protests on buses and trains because they're into the decarbonisation of education. So they're doing away with all teacher staff car parks at schools to promote the decarbonisation of education. I mean, isn't that a gobbledygook? Decarbonisation of education.
Well, I think it's part of the reason people are getting frustrated. As some of the comments have noted, there are genuine concerns by nurses, doctors, teachers, and so forth. And yet when their unions are talking about decarbonisation, they're talking about Gaza and Israel, they're dressing up. So hide their faces, by the way.
Yeah.
And also,
always.
it's funny how the signs and everything. I mean, who's funding all of this without sounding too conspiratorial? But the synergies, if you will, between the processes here in New Zealand and Australia and the UK and the US, it's all the same. You can't help but be cynical. They're not talking about your children's education. They're not talking about your better surgeries. They're talking about decarbonisation. They're talking about Hamas and Israel. I mean, honestly, these guys are tone deaf to where most New Zealanders are at the moment, which is trying to pay the bills in an increasingly costly environment.
The other thing I just wanted to show you, I was watching the footage from the strike today, and I saw a dear friend of ours. In fact, I did a McBlog on him. It's the guy that released the paper at the teachers' conference during the school holidays that said that kids were running around saying that they were Trump boys and girls were talking about trad wives. And I actually figured out that actually he's the activist. It's not the kids. He's the one pushing radical RSE in schools, radical sexuality education, and also, rainbow clubs, etc., LGBT clubs. And I was watching the footage, and lo and behold, he was one of the speakers at the rally, and he was going on about the politicization of the classroom. And I thought, wow, what's the saying? Pot, kettle, black. This was him.
This is not what our communities want. It's not what our communities need.
Yeah,
We're playing games and we need to call it out.
Oh.
They say we're the ones politicising things. What hypocrisy! They choose to direct funds away from communities and into the pockets of those with plenty.
Yeah, so anyway, he was the speaker there, and I thought, I know that face. Oh, look at that. That's a little activist in classrooms pushing the radical RSE. So anyway, I thought that was quite funny. Right, did you want to say anything else about the mega strike before we move on?
Look, the only final comment, because I mean, we could spend all time, and it's going to be no surprise to anyone. They don't do this when Labour's in power. Okay, this is simply the unions not liking the democratic will of New Zealanders and that we have a centre-right government. I can tell you after my years in Parliament, whenever we were in government, they would be at the doors, literally trying to smash through the windows, and I am not exaggerating there. But when Labour's in power, they just go very meek and quiet. So this is like protests you're seeing overseas. People who don't like democracy, and like your last speaker, Bob, they'll talk so big about all these, politicizations that others are doing, but they're blind to their own. So I think most of us can see this is the performative exercise that it is.
Okay, boys, some of the comments are not being very charitable today. Rosie says, I wonder how many of these protesters who are trying to decarbonise will happily hop on a plane to go on holiday. Jackie says he sounds like Benjamin Doyle. He does. I actually thought that as well. David says education has 10 weeks holiday for teacher only days. I think you're just saying teachers have 10 weeks holiday if you include school holidays. And Dee Dee says, just in response to what you said, Simon, they've only been politically active for the last 70 years. And Anna says, of course, Mr. Stevens. That's right. That's the activist that we identified.
Yeah, Paul Stevens.
And Darren says, in terms of decarbonisation, the trains are down again tomorrow until Tuesday. So much for using public transport. So nothing gets any better. Right, let's move on to our next topic. And look, this is going to surprise everybody, but tonight I am going to defend the Greens. Okay, yep, I hope that's a strong drink you just had then, Simon, because I'm actually going to defend both the Greens and Labour. So let's deal with the first one. So Marama, the media were saying that apparently she was supposed to turn up for her bill and it was dismissed because she was late. And so National immediately put the boot in, quite rightly in some ways. Tom Rutherford, the National MP, where's he based? Where's Tom Rutherford? Is he South Island or is he...
He's actually going to be the new MP for Mount Maunganui and South. So he's East Coast Bays at the moment. He replaced Todd Muller. So think Mount Maunganui, well, not Tauranga, but south of Tauranga. So Mount Maunganui, is it down to Whakatane, all that area there.
Okay, it's Papamoa. Bizarre scenes in Parliament. Marama Davidson fails to show up to speak on her bill, meaning the bill is discharged. Labour can't get the basic details right in their policies, which we'll come back to. Their mates in Greens can't show up, and Te Pati Maori can't show up at all. Unfit to govern. Just before you comment on this, let's just watch exactly what happened. And you'll note that Marama is not in the house. They show her seat is vacant, but then she is there. And actually, I did laugh at this clip because the clerks of the house, or whoever does is that what you call them? The people that sit in front of the speaker, they're actually getting the paperwork for this. And they seem to take an awful long time to actually grab the paperwork. And I'm actually wondering if they're trying to buy time. So anyway, just have a watch of this.
Members, I call on Members' Order of the Day number 1.
Take your time. Can't find the paper. Where's Marama?
It is.
Even they laugh.
Consumer Guarantees Right to Repair Amendment Bill, second reading.
Where is she?
Tom Rutherford.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was expecting the member in charge.
Okay, now you can see she's not there. She should be just down the right-hand side, sort of where that first curl on the right, front seat. She should be there. You'll see her appear in a minute.
Of the legislation from the Green Party to stand and take the first call on this bill being at her piece of legislation, but she hasn't turned up to the House.
Just hold off a second.
So she gets some... Oh, see? There she is. So she's actually there now.
Yeah. Because it wasn't moved, I'll have to move to the next...
Move to the next one.
No.
She's struggling.
I've got a bit of a timing issue now. So the member wasn't present to move the motion, and I had just started ruling on that it had to be, it then dropped off, and then we moved to the next item on the member's order of the day.
Okay, I'm going to defend the Greens and simply say, look, does it really matter if you're 10 seconds late, which is probably what it was? Are they really that legalistic, Simon?
I think probably the word is petty. Look, it's not clear cut. Like Marama should have been there. If you've got a bill, doesn't matter if you're a minister moving a bill or an MP, you should be there. You should be there early because actually things sometimes go faster or slower than anticipated. That's, if you will, part of the games of Parliament. So, on members' days, people might speak longer or shorter, again, all just trying to play games around timing, but they should be there. The fact, though, Bob, that she turned up so soon afterwards, you would have thought there could have been a little bit of grace that could have been exercised. But again, this is Parliament. There's games within games. She's hardly the nicest, kindest person to the National Party, so they're not going to be particularly kind back at her. But I think the final point, and I could be wrong on this, I'm not a complete expert on House protocol, but because another member of Parliament spoke, in effect, her bill was dead in the water then because she wasn't there prior to move it. In other words, because someone else has started and she had not moved her bill, it's effectively collapsed, discharged, disappeared. In other words, Maureen Pugh as the Speaker really had no choice. It had to move on. And the really quick final point, interesting to me that Marama nor any of her Green or Labour mates moved a point of order to ask the House to allow it to remain. National could have told them to no, might have said yes, but no one had the wherewithal to just move a point of order and say, oh, hold on, could we do this again? So it's all a bit of a mess, but I'm a little bit on your side. I think a little bit of grace occasionally goes a long way.
Okay, it actually happened, I remember, and you would have been in the House with the abortion bill. And once again, I'm not, in this case, I'm not defending Louisa Wall, but she, was it her or was it the Green MP, the Safe Areas bill, and she forgot to move an amendment or something, and so it got totally forgotten. Golly, I can't remember her name.
Julian Genter, I think.
No, it was the other one, the one that used to be the secretary for Sue Bradford. Somebody will tell us on. Yeah, somebody will tell us on the thing. Actually, people aren't being very polite because trains
are still down.
No, Murray says I need a straitjacket, and Catherine says colour me shocked, Bob. It's because of the fact that I'm defending the Greens, but I do believe in a little bit of grace on that one. Jan Logie. Jan Logie was the name I was trying to think of, and she messed up a. Do you remember that? She messed up a bill, or she wasn't there at the right time, or she didn't follow procedure. I mean, I just thought it's pretty black and white. I mean, how would some people cope? They can't even get to church on time.
Very me, Bob. I do remember the generalities. I can't remember the particular, but yes, there was something they were meant to move. They didn't do it in the right way, and so it actually collapsed. But what happened the next day was there was basically a vote in Parliament to allow that business to be restored. To be honest, I can't remember how I voted. It doesn't really matter. It's not about myself. But
what happened was Louisa Wall put the bill back into the private members' lolly jar, whatever they call it, and it got drawn almost immediately. Who would have thought? How does that work?
Isn't that
Am I right there?
Look, you are probably more correct. I vaguely remember, and maybe it was a different bill, that again mistakes were made procedurally, and so the Parliament the next day went, look, it's not a good look, but actually we're not going to hold it against you.
Yeah.
There are mechanisms to get out of these messes, and again, I'm just surprised that Marama didn't move to say, hey, look, sorry, could we try this again? At which point, by the way, Bob, it would have made the Nats look petty, even more petty and stupid, because again, I think Tom Rutherford speaking effectively moved proceedings on, and that's right for him to do so. The Parliament's not going to sit there. You said 10 seconds, but what happens if it was a minute? We just all sit and wait,
Okay, just thought it was pretty harsh. But anyway, look, I've defended the Greens, but now I'm going to do the opposite, because we're going to talk about... Oh, no, we're not going to talk about that. We were going to... Oh, that's right, Te Pati Maori. We are going to talk about episode 97 of the shambles of Te Pati Maori, but I do just want to just look at a little lead into that, and that is the bill that was passed, it's the Marine and Coastal Act bill. And I do just want to show you a clip from Herald Now, where Marama Davidson and David Seymour are being interviewed about the bill. And basically, David Seymour is saying it was necessary. And I just want you to listen to the explanation. David goes into the justification for this bill, and then have a listen to Marama's response, because she just totally avoids the question and talks fluff.
Well, if it's okay, just to go back to where this all started, the Ngāti Apa case in 2003, the court said that maybe some Māori groups could establish customary title over some parts of the foreshore and seabed if they could prove uninterrupted occupation and use over the last 170 odd years back to the Treaty of Waitangi. The Helen Clark government brought in the foreshore and seabed bill. They passed a law. They said, no, you're not doing that, never ever. That led to the hikoi. The Māori Party broke off Labour. And then when a National Act Māori Party government came in 2008, it passed the Marine and Coastal Area Act, which said, okay, we do recognise that court decision. You can make an application under these conditions, and there's a time limit. Get it done, have your day in court, and then we all move on together. The courts subsequently said, yeah, but okay, if you can show that there was some sort of use at some point, then under tikanga, maybe you can claim the title anyway. That was different from the original standard of uninterrupted use since the Treaty of Waitangi was signed.
Okay, so I'm just going to interrupt because he basically gives a very good explanation of why the bill was necessary and the courts had been activists and reinterpreted it. I just want to go to Marama's response.
Look, let's make it really clear here. The bill that passed last night is a sad day for race relations, especially between the Crown and tangata whenua. It's a sad day for the rule of law, Ryan, where Māori being able to have customary rights over foreshore and seabed. We are kaitiaki protectors for everyone, for protecting the health of the foreshore and seabed, for protecting that right for future generations to be able to enjoy. And this, Ryan, this piece of legislation, which attempts to extinguish customary title, in the face of a government who willy-nilly is just handing off mining rights and seabed trawling rights to offshore Aussie miners, to commercial fishing exploitation, that is the impact on the rest of the public.
Okay, so, I mean, she just seems to go on a complete tangent. What was your take on that bill?
Well, actually, my first observation, isn't it remarkable that two political enemies, in inverted commas, can just stand beside each other? I think at one level, Bob, actually shows the health of New Zealand's democracy. Despite all the issues we discuss, you would not get that easily and readily in the UK or Canada or certainly America. So kudos to them. Look, unfortunately, all of the stuff now gets caught in the lens of that wider treaty politics, and long and short, anyone has a slightly divergent view around the nature of the treaty from what the Greens and the Maori Party hold is called racist. So, Marama's just trying to couch everything in there. I think from, my general memory, what David Seymour's saying is relatively accurate. I can be pretty clear that what the amendment bill does is really just restores the law to what it was intended to be in 2011. I mean, long and short, the courts came in and were pretty creative in their interpretations. And, as a former MP, it's a little bit frustrating when courts will read in black and white what you said. They will look at the law and then they will go down a different direction. So even if we step back from this piece of law, we should be worried about judges who are no longer reading the law but choosing to interpret it to what suits them.
Well,
the other thing, sorry.
No, I was just going to say Family First experienced that with some activist judges, one in particular who has been reinterpreting the law you're referring to and also reinterpreted the Charities Act against us but not against other groups. So anyway, that's some of the activism that we're seeing.
Look, unfortunately, there is, and I actually raised even other cases when I was giving that talk at the legal symposium in Utah. I'm not going to go into them, but mentioned the Family First case. Didn't get into the seabed and foreshore stuff, but we are seeing the courts move away from what we've traditionally understood them to be. Parliament makes the law, the judges read the law and apply it. Now the judges, not all of them by any means, but there are activist judges who go, well, no, where it says black, I'm pretty sure it means white. Where it says down, I think it means up. And they do all these incredible flip-flops, and it's wasting Parliament's time for all the angst around this particular marine and coastal bill. That is hours of Parliament's time wasted to return the law to what it should be, to try, I better stress, to stop the judges. And here's a prediction. The activist judges will still keep having a go around this. They will still try to find a way, whether you like it or not, or agree with it or not, to basically hand as much of the foreshore over to iwi control or custodianship as they can.
Okay, so that was very interesting. That was a bit of a lead into how the Te Pati Maori responded. And it was, I've called this episode 97 because it just seems to be a constant soap opera. And so they decided that they would go outside and they would actually burn a physical copy of the bill.
Hurry before you get arrested.
Copies of the bill were being set alight.
Take that. That's what we think of you.
And there's only one place for it, Kapano. Rapihi.
The Speaker's not happy, telling RNZ it's the dumbest thing you could possibly do.
Okay, do you agree with that?
Well, the first thing I was looking at is Takutai is so pleased about his word rapi, he doesn't quite seem to realise it's just a transliteration of the English for rubbish. But anyway, look, I'd probably lean more on the side. It's a protest. They weren't literally trying to burn the place down. They're making a symbolic gesture of burning, not the actual law. It's just something they've fired on the photocopy, and yep, they get some cheap credit out of it. So at one level, I'm not too fussed by it. I'm more on the free speech side. But this is a bit like you've titled it episode 97. This is a constant, ongoing ratcheting up of their rhetoric, their emotion, and if you will, of a violence. It's just more and more of this. And at what point do you find actually they do burn the actual law, or they decide they're going to do something even more radical because it's just step by step by step?
Okay, but my argument is that they are appealing to their audience, and that there is this radical anti-establishment vote that Pati Maori are getting and will continue to get, and these types of stunts and the violence, and even these complaints that the leadership is a dictatorship and there's all this conflict. I actually think that the base likes it, and it's not going to harm their vote in any way.
No, it won't. Partly, the zealots who support them are not going to go anywhere. And look, to be fair, when you even come to Labour and National, when they get into the 20s in terms of the percentage of the vote, that's their core supporters. It wouldn't matter what happens. But the Māori Party are very good at theatrics. They're very good at appealing to their base. And for a lot of us who would see, burning of bills, or in this case, a law, the funny antics that they do on TikTok, we go, what stupidity. But as you say, it does appeal. It does appeal. And look, never forget, David Seymour tried to drive, was it a Land Rover? Oh, there we go. Sorry, go on.
No, you talk over it. That was just beautiful production work.
Yes, I mean, what's the difference? That's a stunt. Was it 20, 30 years ago? The National MP, Shane Ardern, tried to drive and did drive a tractor up. Look, there's no shortage of theatrics. And you can try to make an argument that fire is worse, but to be fair, it's probably no more dangerous than MPs I won't name stepping outside the doors and having a cigarette.
Okay, but what's the difference? I mean, we also had Destiny Church doing this. I don't think they burnt anything, did they? But they were tearing up. This is all just part of the theatrics, which seems to be in our TikTok world, in our social media world. It tends to reach the audience, and it tends to especially rack up certain groups. Do we just have to get used to these types of burning stunts and not get so exercised about it?
Again, it's not a straightforward answer insofar as, for all of what you've just shown, ripping up different flags and stuff, I view that as a free speech issue. But by and large, don't find it particularly respectful and helpful. I think, Brian Tama could be upset if someone was out there tearing up a Bible or pulling out a New Zealand flag. But that particulars aside, this is what's replacing rational, calm discourse, and that's something we should be concerned about. Because a bit like that earlier clip of Martima Davison talking about the Marine Act or bill, wasn't rational, wasn't particularly logical. Doesn't mean she's wrong, but we're replacing calm, considered conversation with emotional rhetoric. And, people should be very careful for what they wish for, because it won't end with simply ripping and burning flags.
Okay. I just wonder, would the media be so kind of, so they burnt something, big deal, if you or I stood outside Parliament and burnt a copy of the Treaty of Waitangi?
You wouldn't have to worry about the Broadcasting Standards Authority. You'd have bigger issues on your hands.
Yeah, exactly. So it just seems to be a little bit inconsistent on that. Look, I just want to say, Simon, that I was right. I just did check about that bill, and I just read. So this is a report that when they were voting on the abortion bill, apparently there was an administrative mishap in the House, a little bit like Martima Davidson's. And so what they did was they took the bit and turned it into a members bill under Louisa Wall, and lo and behold, it got immediately drawn. Louisa Wall had incredible luck on getting her radical bills like the gay marriage one drawn, which was quite impressive. Just back to Pati Maori though. So she's failed to declare 2 properties under Parliament's rule. And also noticed there was this commentary, I think you might have sent this to me, that Hana Rafferty Maipi Clark employs her mother and her sister in her office back in her electorate. And you've also got Mariamino Kapakingi employing her daughter as an administrative assistant. There seems to be a whole lot of nepotism going on. Is this just in the Māori Party, or is this quite common in political parties where you use taxpayer money to employ your family members? I hope my family aren't listening, because they're not going to be working for me.
No, it's not common. It's actually highly unusual. It has to be approved by Parliamentary Services, which doesn't mean it's right. So look, my memory, which is actually pretty good on this for a change, you don't employ family members. It's as simple as that. There can be some very rare exceptions, and it has happened in other parties. I think there may have even been an example from National. I've just got the vaguest memory, but very, very unusual for the very nepotistic reasons you've mentioned. The fact that this seems to be going on almost wholesale in the Māori Party tells you 2 things. One, the entitlement culture, if not a grift and a graft. But the other is, I think it's the worrying inability of our civil servants, in this case Parliamentary Services, to say no. I'm speculating here. They can't defend themselves, and so I'm not meaning it with any malice, but I suspect the Parliamentary Services is too scared to say no to the Māori Party in a way that they would say no to others.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say as well. You took the words right out of my mouth. I thought maybe are they just too scared because they'll be called racist?
Well, look what happened with, again, it's all reported. We haven't verified the accusations around those further people working, but just look how Irukapu Kingi treated the parliamentary security staff. Awful, threatening. There doesn't really seem to be many consequences.
No. Okay, let's move on. And once again, I'm going to defend the Labour Party this time. So I am becoming a right little lefty, although I won't defend them on this first one. So basically, they announced their first policy, and they did butcher it. They didn't have the data.
It wasn't the only policy boo-boo. Asked yesterday why there was no mention of the $200 million capital injection in the party's Future Fund policy document.
It's in our PR.
No, it wasn't.
I'd need to speak to my comms team, and our comms team would do a fantastic job, and I'm not going to chuck them under the bus.
It was certainly in earlier materials, so I think it was just simply an oversight that it wasn't contained in the press statement.
Christopher Luxon today was relentless.
Future Fund from Labor yesterday was an absolute bunch of drivel. No, seriously, are we going to run up more debt? Well, have you got your answers to which companies are in there? Do you know? Yep, are they? Do we know? Did you ask?
I mean, this is just fodder for the government, isn't it? When you turn up with a policy and you haven't got your facts and figures, it's a little bit like Chloe Strawbrick on Q&A talking about wanting to be the Minister of Finance and couldn't recall basic facts about policy.
Yeah, look, absolutely. You've got to cross your T's and dot your I's, and you should have been able to anticipate that. I mean, personally, I don't think it's a great policy. It's not quite robbing Peter to pay Paul, but the Crown takes money off the Crown, and then the Crown decides who it gives it to through this super fund mechanism. It's like, well, why not just take the money as you were anyway and just distribute it like the government always does? Look, to be slightly fair, being in opposition is miserable, and part of that is you don't have the enormous resources of government. So, not just to stick up for Barbara Edmonds, but she's a good example as the one behind the policy. It's Barbara, her one staffer, and probably 1 or 2 people from Chris Hipkins' wider office all working on it. Whereas when you're in government, you literally have hundreds of policy wonks and officials and entire ministries. So I'm not trying to take away from Labour's mishap. I think this is a good sign of how they run the economy, which is poorly. But, as a little bit of an insight for viewers, this is a lot of hard work for a very few number of people. And so I'm not surprised mistakes are happening. And, we could cast our mind back 3, 6, 9 years when National was in opposition, making blunder after blunder with its announcements.
Yeah, I mean, basic proofreading seems to be the issue. I'm sure the comms staff didn't get afternoon afternoon tea provided that particular day. But then there was the second incident where, and this is where I am going to defend Labor, and I think the media have made a mountain out of a molehill. There was obviously a policy that was being announced in an op-ed in New Zealand Doctor, which is a magazine for the medical professionals. Obviously, they published it a day earlier than Labor were expecting. And so the media got hold of it, but the media made a meal of it.
After 2 years devoid of policy, Labor's announced not one, but two. Not that the leader was expecting it.
You're going to have to wait. If you're interested in an announcement that we may or may not be making, you'll have to wait for the details.
It's already out publicly. It's a New Zealand Doctor, so it's out there.
The announcement has not yet been made publicly.
Trouble is, it had. An article today by Labor's Aisha Verrill revealing Labor would create an independent pricing authority to set sustainable prices for GPs with funding based on patient need and complexity rather than headcount.
Look, the fact that I'm not aware of it, we have health policy coming.
Well, it's a shocker, isn't it? And it just shows that the public can have no confidence in the Labor Party. They've got no idea what's going on.
An hour later, the Labor leader returned to clarify.
You caught me slightly by surprise. I was expecting that health announcement to be tomorrow, but that was my timing that I had in the back of my mind that was incorrect.
Hipkins trying to play it down.
It's a reasonably small announcement.
Yep, nothing to see here.
Aisha was not here today, which is probably one of the reasons why it wasn't flagged up to me that it had gone out today. It's no big deal.
Yep, I agree with Chris Hipkins. It's no big deal. Do you?
Yeah, every reaction there is completely predictable. So, to be fair, I think actually Chris Hipkins managed it quite well. The media's reaction, anytime there's even a little bit of blood in the water, it's all on. They just love drama. And perhaps, Bob, they're a little bit sick of putting the boot in every day to Chris Luxon that they thought they'd spend 24 hours on Hipkins. And, at the end of the day, it probably is administrative. Oh, and by the way, the fact that, the government ministers hoe on in and say this is a sign that Labor's terrible, this is all predictable political theatrics. But more than likely, it was just, again, an administrative mistake. They've been working on this policy, and someone somewhere has put the wrong thing in the diary. And, Hipkins is busy like all the politicians and was probably like, I'll read it tonight. Well, too late, it got published.
Yeah. All right, we're fast running out of time. You did touch on this earlier, and that is that about the unity across the House that often people don't see. And this was an amazing story. So you've got 4 MPs from the Tauranga area, Bay of Plenty. You got 2 National, 1 ACT, and 1 Labor, and they sat in a car for 7.5 hours, driving from Tauranga to Wellington. It's a nice story, really, about the fact that they can have a good time together. Why are they spending 7 hours in a car?
I was more struck by the gendered headline because I'm pretty sure the seafood salad wasn't those 3 guys. But anyway.
That's what I thought too. Gosh, us misogynists.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this. I know 3 of 4 of them, but you could apply this to pretty much all the MPs that, they're not all best mates. Okay, let's be clear about that. But you can actually be quite civil together. I saw it when we had international travel. I've seen it when the cameras are not on, select committee work and so forth. So look, this at one level is not really a complete surprise. Will they be kinder to each other in the House when they're debating? Probably not, but actually MPs are human. They can be civil. And look, I'm sure they had quite a good laugh and a variety of chats in the vehicle, which probably too would be semi-productive. But the other thing I might quickly point out, and I hope it's not to bore people, and you can silence me if you want, this is not completely unusual. I've several times had to drive from Auckland to Wellington to get to Parliament, because there really is an expectation that you are at your party's caucus on a Tuesday morning, and you are certainly at Parliament by 2:00. So in other words, just because your flight is cancelled, or I remember once being actually in Hamilton and the fog set in, so myself and a couple of other MPs drove to Rotorua to get on one of the planes to get down. You basically move heaven and earth to get there. So them being in the car and doing what they are doing is not unusual. As I say, I've certainly done it several times, which I will admit is quite exhausting.
Yeah, I bet. But it's quite a nice touch, and it's good for people to see. All right, fast running out of time, so I just want to go through these. Amnesty International, the boss of Amnesty International is in town giving us a lecture just before you comment on what they're saying, I mean, we tend to relate to Amnesty International ending the death penalty, although they think that killing the unborn child is a human right, believe it or not. They think that Israel is apartheid. They march in the Pride Parade. They strongly supported the conversion therapy ban, so they don't think that people should have dominion over their own life in terms of gender and sexuality. They even went to Ihamatau because apparently they were documenting human rights situations. I've actually republished a blog I did a while back about how they've mission drifted from what they were originally called to do. But anyway, they're in the country giving us a lecture. What was your response to their lecture?
Bugger off. I'm afraid I have very little time for Amnesty International now. It doesn't mean that I disagree with all their positions, but they're a little bit like the Overton window, as in, what was traditional views on human rights. They've gone so far out to the left, it borders on ridiculous and so inconsistent. It's insane. And sadly, that they are picking up on, again, the usual woke progressive left-wing issues. I mean, they don't appear, from what I can see, to be talking much about what's happening in Myanmar, persecution all of a sudden of
Nigeria.
Chinese Christians, Nigeria, Kenya, the list goes on. No, they are just stuck in certain issues. And, she in particular came to lecture us on climate change, and that New Zealand should basically let all and everyone in from the Pacific Islands because somehow New Zealand has a duty to do so. Now, we can discuss that. She's welcome to raise it. I just don't know why Amnesty thinks it can make such deep moral and political statements. But she can talk, she can be engaged by media, but I'd say most of us don't particularly care. And as I say, we can do what we can for our neighbours in the Pacific Islands, but to be told that New Zealand must basically let all and everyone in from the Pacific Islands because of climate change, these are very bold things she's deciding, rather than, allowing our parliament to discuss them.
Yep. Okay. Right. Just have we got time? Yeah, we'll go through these really quick. That was a blatant bit of advertising there. To watch the blog that we've just republished.
Well, now I know how you get so much content. You're just rehashing stuff.
Well, the thing is, I heard Amnesty International, and of course the media were all over them and loving every minute and having special interviews. 3 News at 6, they had a whole sit-in interview with her going on about it. And I thought, hang on, there's more to the story. And I remembered that I'd done this blog. So yeah, I'm going to plagiarize and reissue all I can to save time. Actually, so while I'm advertising, do you want to advertise your latest Substack?
Oh, actually, yeah. Well, my latest one actually was on the BSA, although tomorrow I'll be dropping a new one, which is sharing what I spoke about in Utah around religious freedom and belief in New Zealand and how it's been eroded. A little bit dry, not the best advertisement, but that'll be coming out.
Okay, well, let's just touch on that very quickly before we wrap it up. BSA is coming. I mean, the government, you hear the Prime Minister and Winston Peters and David Seymour all saying the BSA should get lost and close it down. But you have the Minister of Broadcasting, Paul Goldsmith, who took over from who I think would have been far better, Melissa Lee, when, that was right at the start when Luxon basically saw the headlights coming for him and didn't defend his minister. I thought it was shameful, actually, what he did to Melissa Lee. But anyway, Paul Goldsmith is the new Minister of Broadcasting, and he's hinting, actually, no, we might come after the platform and Reality Check Radio. And in fact, in the list there, I think they even had the Free Speech Union and some other right-wing group. They'd never included the left-wing groups, ironically. Go figure.
Yeah, the group you're thinking of is it NZD SOS, so the New Zealand Doctors?
Yeah. Shocking.
Yeah, wrong call by Paul Goldsmith. The right call, as I understand it, from Luxon and others. Look, the BSA can go away. We actually don't need them at all. In fact, this saga around the platform just shows that they are politically compromised. They really are trying to, firstly, exceed the mandate of Parliament. They do not have the legal powers. They've just made them up. Yep. And they are clearly wanting to target people of a particular political persuasion. And I don't want to see it expanded. And then, a reminder to Paul, if he's watching, that actually he's meant to be on the centre right, which means less government, fewer regulations and restrictions. And I can see the question that you've put up from Dennis. I would say they will become that, because actually we found, and you mentioned the Free Speech Union, Bob.
Yeah.
The Free Speech Union is not a broadcaster in the sense of RCR or the platform, but BSA had them on their drop-down list of broadcasters they're keeping an eye on. And to answer Dennis's question, what the Free Speech Union does is podcasts. I mean, Dennis does his, leadership is changing. We do all our podcasts. You and I will get drowned in vexatious, I want to stress that word, vexatious complaints, in order to try and stop us working. And that's what the BSA absolutely intends to do. And they say, no, we don't want to expand. Well, let's just drop the A off the BS, and that's what I'm trying to say about them.
Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh, did I?
I can't believe you stole that one. I was just lining up ready to do that slam dunk to finish the show. Anyway, we are out of
Take two. Take two.
We are out of time, and we will we will be taking Monday off because it is a public holiday, Labor Day, as we celebrate the Labor Party, I think. Is it Labor Day? So we'll be taking Monday off, and there'll be no Straight Talk. But the following Monday is our 100th episode of Straight Talk, so we've got a special for you on that. But we will be back for Political Playback next Thursday. So anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you, Simon. You have a great night. You on cooking tonight?
It's leftovers tonight, so
Leftovers.
no. Well, maybe microwaving.
Okay, leftovers, so no food poisoning. Well done. Thank you for watching. Sorry we didn't get to all your comments, but yeah, have a great night. See you next time.